You're listening to Next in the Queue. This is an interview-based podcast that connects listeners, musicians, writers, producers, really anyone in the industry through curated playlists. Today, I'm joined with Chris Adams, musician and producer, and he has his own project called PENDANT. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I kind of want to start with like telling you how I got into you because I think it's kind of like a funny story, but not really.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so like back in 2021 when kind of still in the pandemic era, I think the band Bachelor had like a online music festival that was like kind of from the internet, and I was kind of like unemployed slash at home at the time because like I graduated in 2020. So your song, I don't know which song it was, came on, and I DM'd you, and immediately I was like, what song is this? And you were like, it's not out yet. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then my friend sent me Static Dream, and I was like, this is so familiar. And then it clicked in my head, and I was like, yes, from that one music festival that I like was just online in my bed listening to.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that was like the first time I ever like debuted any music from like this record. And that song, that in particular, like the song wasn't mixed, like it wasn't done. And I don't know how long before we released that song I did the Bachelor thing.
Yeah, it was June 2021. So,
okay.
I don't know, maybe like almost a year.
That song, yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. Wow. That song is called Blood Right. It's like
Okay. Because I was like, I knew it was in Static Dream, but I was like, this is so familiar. I remember this completely.
yeah, that's crazy that you were on that like that
Yeah.
really funny like Zoom call.
Yeah, it was
Like
just
the
like
online festival,
yeah, it was
online festival Zoom call.
yeah, it was one ginormous Zoom call. Yeah.
Right.
But as soon as someone sent me Static Dream, I was like, yes, I remember exactly how I know this. But speaking of harp, we're coming up on almost the 1 year anniversary. I think like almost like a month from today, it'll be 1 year. What do you think
Yeah,
are
you're right.
the key things that you took away from that album and like that has trickled into like what you're currently working on now?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I've learned a lot since that record came out, and I'm struggling now um, with my expectations for the next set of songs that I want to make and release.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I learned everything from scratch in making harp. You know, I was like totally unfamiliar with using Logic or programming drums or using software instruments. It all just started from zero. And I had no idea for most of the time that I was recording that I was even making an album. You know, it was like my pandemic project. I just wanted to try to make dance music in my own like funny way. So yeah, now I'm like brushing up against like, you know, making music with the intention of like people hearing it. And having like expectations about what that type of music or like what type of quality that should hold up against. I don't know. I still really love that record. Like I've gone through like many phases of loving and hating it. And I've come out, I think the other end, mostly just like appreciative of that record. And it's like changed my life, like for the better in so many ways. And I don't know, like it exposed me to so many new ideas and music and people and places. And I owe a lot to that record. And I'm super grateful that like people have picked it up the way that they have. Yeah, I don't know. It's like there's a whole like universe of things going on in my head like all the time where I'm just like, can I make something better than that? There's like real I don't know, like doubt sometimes creatively when you off the back of something that you think is really good, be like, oh my God, like I'm starting from zero. I have no new music. I have to like try to make something better than that. This thing that I worked for like a year. It's very daunting to look at. So yeah, I don't know. I really, really appreciate that record. And I'm like excited to see where it takes me from here. But at the same time, it's always kind of like lingering in my head, like, dang, how did I do any of that? It's like, it's almost kind of like blacking out when you're making a record. You like don't know how any of it actually materializes. It's just like these millions of tiny decisions that you're making over the course of months and months and months. And then suddenly you have these songs in front of you.
Yeah. Do you think that because this album was a pandemic project, it kind of gave you, because you were talking about how like now you have to like make music with intention, and like, do you think part of making Harp was like you didn't have to really put anything out there for anyone? I feel like you didn't want to do it anymore. You could have just quit. Like, but now you have to like kind of have expectations for yourself. Do you think it's holding you back in a way, like knowing that you have to meet a certain goal now?
It's definitely like manipulating my process. It's like soaking into my process in a way that I didn't know would happen. Where it's like everything I listen to or everything I start working on, any new ideas are held up against this backdrop of this like finished product that I worked on for, like over a year. And I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't stand up to the quality that I'm expecting from myself or the quality of this last thing that I did. And so I don't know. Yeah, it's like kind of this psychic battle to try to like forget what you've done, or forget whatever like expectations people might have for you or you have for yourself. Because it can be like really suffocating and like paralyzing, where it's like I want something to materialize like instantly that reflects like a good idea that's like going somewhere that gets me really sparked. But like all my best ideas from my last record from Harp came from like not knowing what I was doing at all, from just like wandering on the internet and like downloading random YouTube videos, sampling things, cutting things up with no expectation for like where they would go, And yeah, a lot of like my favorite songs on Harp started with like a terrible idea, like a brutally like bad idea that I'm like makes my like skin crawl when I think about it. But it's like, oh, that jumped off this whole process where I, had this one idea that didn't materialize or didn't go anywhere, but I took one part of that and that sort of mutated into this thing that ended up becoming what I thought was a great idea. So it's like you have to allow yourself to fuck up and like have bad ideas. I don't know. You kind of have to be like really delicate with yourself when you're coming up with new ideas, or at least I do. And like, I'm starting to like get back in the groove of just like, I set things down for a while. I haven't like worked on a new song in a couple weeks, and I'm going to go on a trip. I'm playing shows, and then I'm going to come back, and I hope that I'll have like sort of a fresh head, fresh ears, and like allow myself to do like make the silly, like assemble the silly ideas that I don't think will go anywhere that eventually do go somewhere and produce something good.
Yeah. Do you collaborate more with people to kind of just help you like stay grounded in like what you're working on?
I have, yeah. I mean, I've set the bar a lot higher for myself. Like, Harp was like a huge leap from what I was doing prior to that, and now I want to make another like really big leap into something else. It's kind of just like the way that things have evolved for me. I want to keep on the same sort of aesthetic and style that I established with Harp. I just want it to be elevated and like more refined. So yeah, like, and I don't know how to do that stuff. Like I'm still in the process of like figuring out like how to get there, like I set the bar and now it's like, I need to like build up the strength to jump over the bar. Like I don't have it yet. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've been thinking about like, working with other people, producers, people have reached out to me. That's like been a crazy thing that's happened since the record came out, is like people have like really cool producers and musicians have expressed interest in collaborating. And that's like something that I'm like really unfamiliar with and still kind of scared of. So yeah, it's like, it's becoming clear, like I need to reach out to people to help me like reach this, this thing that I have in my head, cause it's going to be much easier. And, I'll probably figure out like new techniques or new ideas that I wouldn't have arrived at without someone else's help.
Yeah, and you previously stated that like this is different than what you've previously worked on. Like Through a Coil is like definitely way different than harp. Do you think that had anything to do with the pandemic and not being able to use like avenues that you would normally use?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was like the whole mission with like starting to self-produce and program my own, like electronic music and stuff, and just like dive headfirst into that world. I had like little to no experience doing that before. And yeah, had the pandemic not happened, I probably would have written and recorded like another indie rock or like shoegaze, whatever adjacent record. Cause that's what was like, that was like the easiest thing for me to assemble on my own. And I had the most experience doing that. So yeah, when I was like shut in my apartment, couldn't like access, recording studios or whatever, was the perfect opportunity to just like, go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think harp pulls from like a lot of different genres, like R&B, definitely electronic, and like some even punk influences. I mean, like, do you just have a massive like music library? Like, what are some of like the influences specifically that you had for that album?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the records that have like affected me the most in my life have a similar sort of like eclectic and like ambitious stylistic like frame of reference. I'm trying to think. There's a band called Crack Cloud from Vancouver. Their record, maybe it was their second record, came out in like 2019 or 2018. Before the pandemic, and I was obsessed with them. I was like, I couldn't believe like what I was hearing. It's this collective, and they started out as like a post-punk band, like a very sort of direct, Gang of Four, like Wire, The Fall, like kind of like Worship, that style of post-punk. And they suddenly like branched out into this really ornate, like rich, like orchestral punk with like hip hop influences and like dance music fused into it. And I was stunned. And like the visuals were so dramatic and insane and like maximal. It was all just like, I couldn't believe like what I was like receiving from my computer. And so, yeah, I got really obsessed with that band. And then like, I've always been a fan of like Death Grips. I've always been a fan of like certain like noise music adjacent people like One O Tricks Point Never and Arca. And yeah, like over the course of my 20s, just like digging into the sounds more while being in punk bands and playing in like rock bands and stuff. But having like a real like fandom for that corner of the music world. And just sort of like observing for a long time. And then like also my love for shoegaze and like, 90s rock. Like I'm a huge Oasis head. Like I want to write the as good of a song as like, people hate this song, but like as good as Wonderwall. Like to me, that's like,
I mean, people hate it, but everyone knows what Wonderwall is. Yeah.
Everybody knows. Yep. So yeah, like that's kind of become the formula. It's like, how can I want to write the best possible song as I can. and then embellish it and elevate it with like elements of like dance music or electronics or like whatever I can do to sort of give it an unusual edge.
Yeah. So I know growing up you had like a huge punk influence in your life, but what drew you to more electronic music in recent years?
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's been a long, I've spent a long time just sort of like slowly creeping into that world and observing it, and like, uh, I still like feel like somewhat of a novice in terms of like my understanding of dance music and like its history and where it's even at now. You know, I very much feel like 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 a bystander or something, and I'm just kind of marveling at the work that these like pioneers are doing. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I remember super vividly, like the first time a friend of mine played the Window Liquor music video for me on YouTube in like 2010. I was like 18. And I think the stark contrast to the aesthetics of punk rock and hardcore, it was like everything was so like dry and mechanical, and like the visuals of that video are like so extreme, but like really quite surreal. And I think, okay, here's what I think. I think that like hardcore and punk have this like this admiration for tradition, and like perpetuating this style, you know, this one style that came out of, you know, New York and London in the 70s. And it's obviously evolved and like mutated into like all these different things that are really cool in their own right. But it's like, it's heavily steeped in the tradition of, you know, what was happening in like the 80s, you know, like American hardcore in the 80s. Like, people still want to sound like recreate that sound. Mm-hmm. Where it was like, and that doesn't really like give you a lot of space to experiment. And like, not to say that there aren't great like experimental hardcore bands or people who like push the boundaries, but the like window of aesthetics is very small, and it doesn't allow for like more theatrical or like, I don't know, like absurd or like ridiculous performances, or like even like the way people dress. It's like very codified, you know, like there's like a real there's like real boundaries of like how people behave and dress, and like it's what makes it such a strong culture is people like get really obsessed with it. But like, I think I was just like really fascinated by like I said, you know, Arca and OPN and like getting into Aphex Twin, and then a bunch of, you know, like ambient house stuff, Boards of Canada, like all these like big name electronic acts. They were using this totally separate set of aesthetics to accomplish like the same feelings. And I think that's kind of what drew me too, because like dance music is super heavy. It's so heavy, but using the total opposite ends of the like audio spectrum. It's like the highest highs and the lowest lows, and punk and hardcore sits right in the middle. It's like a brick of mid-range, you know, that's like really effective and can like really like punch the listener and like shock the listener. But I found that like electronic music could access these frequencies that, you know, guitar music couldn't, that resulted in like much heavier and more extreme sounds. So I was like these guys are like the real sickos, like the guys, you know, programming like 808s, you know, like they're rattling the whole building, you know, they're like, I don't know. It's like when you get hit with like a sound like that at such a high volume, it almost feels like kind of psychedelic, you know? So yeah, I don't know. Long story long. That's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah. And since you've released Harp, you've actually released a couple of remixes. yourself? How is it collaborating with all of those artists that you reached out to?
Yeah, well, they pretty much all of them are friends of mine, or like people who I became friends with through releasing this album, and people whose work I admire. Some for like a really long time, and others like only quite recently. Like I've been a fan of Will Weisenfield Baths for, I don't know, like something probably a little over 10 years now. He put out the Cerulean record, just like blew my mind. I thought, think about like when I was starting to listen to electronic music, and that record had a huge impact on me. And I want to shout out Will because I stole his exact live setup. I like watched videos of him performing for like months and months to prepare for my own live shows. You know, like I studied like so meticulously, like zooming in on YouTube videos. And he has like a couple like tutorial videos that I just like worshipped. And yeah, I started listening to his record Cerulean in like 2011 or 2012. And yeah, it just kind of like opened a door for me, like showed me this like sonic palette that I didn't really know. I didn't know that it existed before then. So like coming full circle and having him remix one of my songs, it's very, I'm honored. And I like made a bunch of friends through like releasing this record, like I said, and like people came out of the woodwork and expressed interest in remixing my stuff. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's super exciting. I didn't really work with any of them on that. Gave them like free reign to do whatever it is like creatively that they felt like compelled to do. But I was like so happy with every single one of them. And they did things that I could never even think of. So, respect to everyone on that remix record. They totally freaked it.
And so Harp is an album that kind of addresses grief, and instead of a way to like escape reality, confronts it. How do you think that this album helped you through emotions like grief, anger, and pain?
I think it allowed me to, the biggest thing was that around that time, I was like giving myself permission to look at really negative, painful memories and give them a place in my songs. Like, I think prior to that, like my dad died when I was 18, and it was really messy and sad. And he was like a really troubled person. And I think I was like so young and like so unequipped to handle something like that. And I wasn't, same for like most of my life, like leading up to that, was like too young to handle a lot of the things that I was like experiencing. So I developed kind of like a numbness to extreme feelings like that, or extreme circumstances. And so when I would go into like starting like a creative project where I wanted to like write a song about my dad, or like my memories about him or whatever, they always came from a place like sort of a surface level understanding of what I was going through, which is like, I miss this person. Like I loved them. They're gone now. And I wish they were here, you know, like I wasn't really like giving myself space to look at the full picture. And a lot of that included like really gnarly, sad, scary memories. And yeah, I did like a lot of work, like went through a lot of therapy and tried a lot of things. And I came out of that with a better understanding of like how I actually feel about my dad. And it made me actually, and like looking at those like negative or extreme feelings, actually gave me like a more rich appreciation of like the more positive memories and feelings that I had for him. Yeah, just sort of assessing things more like globally for myself. Yeah. So I started making songs that like that reflected these like fucked up experiences that I'd been through with my dad, you know, that I hardly spoke about with friends, much less put in my music. And yeah, that again, that like allowed me to have a more holistic look at our relationship. And I could see like what was really there, as opposed to just like slapping a sign that was like, I miss you, dad, like love you. And it just gave things more dimension, made things feel more real. Like I was actually remarking on his life and not just and not just like a caricature of a memory that I had for him. Yeah. So also it was like, I feel like that was my opportunity to just like make a grief record, like for once and for all. Cause I've been, you know, that happened. I lost my dad 12 or 13 years ago. And since then I've been making music about that. And at this point it's like, I don't need to do that anymore. I mean, I'm sure it's always, that experience is always going to like invade my creative process. And I'm like grateful for that. You know, I'm glad that I can bring in all of my experiences and like channel them into, you know, whatever it is I'm working on. But like, I don't need to write grief songs right now. Like I'm happy to have done that. And I think that's like a pretty, that's as good as I can do in terms of making a record about grief. I'm like super satisfied with sort of letting that be and going on and writing songs about, you know, whatever it is I want outside of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of media makes, I don't know, grief and pain and like any emotion really just seem like very black and white and very cookie cutter kind of in a way. So it's like, it might take however long you need to like process or go through it. And like you said, like you feel like you've done all that you can and put all of that into your music and you're ready to start working on other things.
Yeah. I mean, even outside of music, like people sort of like, yeah, like you said, in media, grief is portrayed as a bit of a binary, like happy, sad, miss you, love you. Like here's a window of time where I'm grieving and now I'm done grieving. Where it's like, this is, you know, it lasts forever. It's like, it's who you are. And I'm like, you know, I'm grateful for like having the experience I did, like going through the stages of grief. And I'm like looking forward to like seeing how that develops. And like, I feel like I know myself way better now for that. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, just like carrying that through my life, like day by day, you know, it makes everything feel more like rich and real. I feel like more of myself when I'm like tapped into those feelings.
Yeah, definitely. And so you decided to make a playlist on being in a band / going to a show.
Yeah.
So if you're ready to talk about that, we can.
Let's do it.
So how long have you been attending shows?
Let's see. I think the first show I ever went to was in like 2005 or something, 2006. I would have been 13, 12 or 13. Yeah, that was like a punk show for like a local hardcore band in LA that I absolutely worshipped. So yeah, 13, I'm 31 now. So almost like 20 years.
What was it like experiencing your first show? Like what were like some of the emotions that you went through?
Just like so surreal and shocking. It was like a metalcore show, you know, it was not a nice show. It was like scary. It was super scary. That's probably one of the most like overwhelming feelings I came out of that show with, was like, damn, I'm scared. Like being so young and so small and just like jumping in headfirst into such a, like, it's like kind of a depraved scene of people just like hurting each other, you know, like going out of their way. That was so shocking. But I think the fear was also like so exciting and strange and enticing to me. It ended up being like super intoxicating, obviously, because I just like I never really stopped from there. But seeing like grown men with like huge holes in their ears, it was like during the time where like people were going hard on gauges, like, you know, like
Yeah,
the
really
size
long.
of, yeah, like the thick ones, like huge. And like all of these like, you know, people with like black arm tattoos and just like really extreme personalities. I think it was like so overstimulating at the time. It was just like, what the hell was that? Like, we gotta go back there. Like that was insane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just like a combination of shock and intrigue. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but it kept you interested. I think my first show, well, I attribute this to like why I keep on going to shows. I don't think it was necessarily my first show because I lived in the South. So like my first show was like a country. Um, I think it was like Dirk Bentley, and I just went with my friends because I wanted to. So I didn't really know the artist.
Mm.
But the first one that got me interested was like a Bad Sun show or something like that back in like, I don't know.
Bad Sons, like SUNS.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know some of those guys
Yeah. It
pretty
was so
well.
long ago. It was like when they released their first album. And
Uh-huh.
I want to say it was 2014. So I was a late bloomer. I was like probably like 15. Um, and I just went and I loved the entire experience. And I was like, I need to keep on coming back and keep on doing this. And then, I mean, obviously it translated into my life now because I work in music, but I
Yeah,
was like, I
totally.
want to keep on doing this one thing because I don't know. There's something about being a fan of a certain artist. I think now I go to a ton of shows. So
Mhm.
sometimes it can be like, you know, monotonous when I do actually go to a show that I'm like, wow, yeah, I remember why I'm like such a fan of just like going to live shows and going like being a part of the scene.
Wow, shout out to Bad Sons
Yeah, shout out to
for
Bad
igniting
Stuff,
your life in
igniting
music.
my love of concert.
Yeah, there's the bass player Gavin. I see him quite often. I'm gonna tell him that next time I see him. Full
Yeah.
circle. Um, yeah, totally. There's something like really electric and um enlivening, you know, that like can't really be replicated in any other way. And yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you're super right. I think about this all the time. Actually, I was at a show the other night, and I was telling my friend afterwards. I was watching this band called Storefront Church, and he has this record, this like really like lush, ornate record of orchestral like pop music. It's like nothing I'm hearing right now. Like no one else is doing stuff like this. And I was telling my friend like it was so cool and insane watching him because as a musician, I feel like I'm always kind of insanely scanning music and music related things for my own use
Mhm.
uh, and like for my own interest. So it's really cool and unusual now when my musician brain just switches off and I'm just like experiencing something like for exactly what it is and not trying to mine these like little parts that I can take with me and keep and try to recycle into my own little ideas. It's really, it feels really special. And I have like a much bigger appreciation for just like being a fan now. It's just like, it's so pure. It feels so good.
Yeah, and you got
Um,
like the giddy feeling. It's like,
oh yeah. I was so excited. Like he had posted this, that he was going to play at Zebulon, this place in LA. And I was like, he posted it like a month before the show, and I felt straight up giddy. I was like, damn, I can't wait to go to this show, you know, this like small show where I just get to watch this thing happen. And it reminded me like, damn, being a music fan is so sick. And so I wish I could like access that part of my brain more often. So yeah, respect to all the fans.
yeah. So when you were first attending shows, did it like ever make you want to start your own band?
Yeah, I think even before then, just had it in my brain for some reason that like I was going to be a rock musician. My dad played a little music. He like made funny, really like kind of goofy country songs. He like grew up in LA his whole life, but he made songs about like living on a ranch and like being a farmer and like driving a truck. Which is so funny to like listen to now. But yeah, he was like, he wasn't super proficient with like recording or arranging songs, but he like figured it out enough to get someone to like record these ideas that he had. And I remember quite vividly him playing like a CD that he brought home from the studio. It was like it was like a mix that they had just did. And he was playing in the living room and I was like falling asleep in my room. And I came out and I was like, is this you? And it was like seeing your dad like in a movie on TV, you know? So it just felt like unbelievable. Like, how did you make something that we're hearing from the radio? It was like just in the CD player, but I'm like, I was starstruck. Like, how'd you do that? So I became pretty like fascinated with like recording and making my own ideas and like, just, I don't know, being like a rock kid from like a very young age and like becoming obsessed with whatever music I could get my hands on. So yeah, I always kind of knew that I wanted to be in a band.
It's fun. I like wish I could be in a band. That's my one thing. But when I was younger, I would like have me and my sisters, like when I was like, I don't know, probably like 10 or 12. We would like all of my sisters like have T names, and I was like, our band is going to be called the Triple T's. Like, we're gonna have someone can be vocals, someone's going to be on bass, and like we would like just like play pretend and do stuff like that all the time. But I think it like gave me like really deep dive into like different types of musical tastes that I have like right now. But yeah, I just
do you know the band ESG?
Yeah.
I think isn't that band named after like isn't ESG the first letter of, I think they're all sisters or maybe they're friends.
I think so.
But the T's is Triple T, is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have two other sisters. Shout out to my sisters, TT and Tiwa, and like Tope. So I was like, Triple T's, it just goes. So we should do that.
Yeah, get the band together. It's never too late. Get some tracks.
So what's like the best show that you've ever been to?
The best show? Whoa. Oh, it's actually quite easy. I saw Prince perform in like 2014. Only like a couple of years before he died. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he announced, or it was announced that I was living in San Francisco at the time. It was announced that he was going to do 4 shows at this really small club called the DNA Lounge. And he was doing a matinee and like a midnight show for 2 days. And so like word got around about that, and then tickets went on sale. And of course the tickets were like, you know, I think they were like $200 or something. And it sold out immediately. And I was like, okay, well, there goes that. Like, forget it. And then I show up to work. I was working at a middle school, like running this after school program. And I have this really like funny, like rocker, kind of like hippie coworker who, we were just like talking about like music or something. And I brought up Prince that he was playing. He's like, oh yeah, man, I got tickets to that. And I'm like, oh, no way. He's like, yeah, I don't think I can go. Do you want them? He was just like so nonchalant. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? You can't be serious. And I also didn't know that this guy had like the wherewithal to like spend $400 or $600.
Yeah.
I didn't think he had the means or like the intellect to like be able to do that before they sold out.
Yeah.
So I was just like shocked, like, what are you saying, dude? This can't be real. And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, I have like one extra ticket if you want it. And I paid him like $100 for it. And I went by myself. There was like maybe 300 people max at the show. Prince went on at midnight, I think, and he played until maybe 2 or 2:30 a.m.
Oh, wow.
he played this massive set, like throughout like the whole catalog, like a bunch of deep cuts that I had never heard at that time, and that I like had to go find them, and like introduced me to a bunch of like great obscure Prince records. And yeah, he was just like a force. Like he was like glowing the entire time. It was like, it was palpable. Like everybody could feel it in their bodies, you know, that he was like this larger than life, like ethereal being, you know, that's just like, we're lucky to catch him, you know, like while he's on earth. And he was just absolutely shredding. The entire stage was lined with guitar pedals, and he was on like a wireless input on his guitar. So he would run to different sides of the stage and like hit these pedals, and then run to the other side and like hit a distortion pedal, run to the other side, and then turn that distortion pedal off. It was like everywhere he went, he was just like slamming these pedals and shredding and screaming. It was like inhuman. Like I didn't quite understand what I was watching. And then and then he like went off stage. We like, you know, the crowd was just like in shock and like screaming for like an encore, obviously, you know. And he came out, I think he did like 2 encores. And like the last encore, he didn't play any instruments, and like the band like put down all their instruments, and he just started DJing his own songs like through the house. He did like When Doves Cry. He didn't play When Doves Cry in his set. Mm-hmm. And he just turned on When Doves Cry and started dancing to it and like lip syncing. And like the whole band was on stage with him, dancing with him. And the crowd was like, the whole place was just like electric. It was unbelievable. Yeah, that has to be one of the more insane things I've ever seen. And then of course, like only a couple of years later, he died, you know, like had this crazy untimely death. So like it resonated even more, you know, the fact that I got to see him.
Yeah. On the flip side, I won't like ask you to name the show, but like, what's the worst show experience that you've had?
Oh, I'll tell you. I have no problem telling you. It's actually something that it's like a story I enjoy telling because it's so strange. I played in a band, in like a punk band in the Bay. I played in a bunch of bands in the Bay, but this one that I was in for a long time was called Never Young. And, for some reason we got asked to do this show in LA at the Roxy, opening up for a band that I'd never heard of, prior to that. Well, it's not really a band, but like a group. They're called Suicide Boys. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
It's like a, you know, like a SoundCloud rap thing. It was like during the height of like the SoundCloud era or whatever, or SoundCloud rap era. And the promoter ran this like hip hop website, and he was like, you guys should play. Like, I like your music, and I think that it would translate with like the Suicide Boys fan base. Yeah. And we're like, okay. He's like, yeah, it's going to sell out. Like, it's going to be a huge show. Like, you guys can open, I'll pay you, whatever. And we're like, all right, sounds good. And we listened to their music, and it was like, okay, like, it's kind of like aggressive. Like, I think maybe there's a chance that this would make sense, like on a bill. And yeah, we get there, and it's like line, like a 2-mile line or something. I don't know. Like everyone showed up. Like, it's one of those things where everyone showed up like in the morning to get into this show, you know, like I think it was maybe their first LA show too. Like, it was something really crazy. So the place fills up, and there's like a DJ playing for what feels like hours before we go on. And it's like full of like kids, like really, like pent up kids, you know, who are like moshing to the DJ. And I'd never seen anything like that. Like, the place was rattling, you know, like the music was so loud and so deep. Like the sub was just like, it was like vibrating everyone, and kids were going insane. And I remember looking down from the balcony and watching these like teenagers. I was like 25 at the time, and I felt so alienated from them. I was like, I don't understand these kids at all. And I don't think they understand anything about me either. And I suddenly got so scared, and I was like, I felt like a dream. where like you have to do something, but you're totally unprepared to do it. I have dreams about like playing shows all the time where it's like, I don't have my guitar, like I don't have my thing. Like, how am I going to do it? I have to get on stage. That's exactly how I felt looking down off this balcony. And I was just like surrounded by all these like crazy people that I didn't know until years later. Like all these like hip hop personalities, like Lil Peep was there. Lil Peep did a song before we went on, before he like ever blew up. And like a bunch of other like, I don't know, SoundCloud rappers or whatever. And then we got on stage and immediately the vibes were just like wrecked.
Yeah.
we were like fucking up people's night, you know, like with our music. Like it's the totally opposite spectrum on like the like audio frequency range. Like they were playing like super guttural low end, like bass heavy music. And we were playing this really shrill, like scratchy guitar music. So everyone was just like, what the fuck what are these guys doing? And we got booed like after the first song. And I was like, okay, that's not nice. But we have to play for like 20 more minutes. So like maybe we'll win them over. Second song, they were booing still. And after the third song, they started chanting Suicide Boys. And I was just like overcome with like anger and sadness and being like, why am I doing this? Like, I should just get a job. I don't want to like ever face this kind of thing again. It's just like especially when you work so hard for like nothing for a long time, you know, like being in a band, like you work your ass off for nothing for years, you know, just like building, like trying to like build what it is you're trying to do. And I think that was like a breaking point where I was like, I'd been in a band for so long. I hadn't really seen any like success from it. Wasn't exactly expecting it, but it was like, I was just tired. I was really tired and like worn down at that point. And then just like seeing all these like teenagers like boo me and like essentially like throw tomatoes at us. I was like, man, I don't think I'm cut out for this anymore. I think I need to stop. I had like I had to like really look at myself after that and like talk to my bandmates and be like, are we wrong? Like, are we delusional? Is like what we're doing actually just like bad? You know? Cause like, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you believe in what you're doing, like you should do it regardless of what people think of you. But like so much about being a band is like presenting yourself for other people to try to like get them on the bandwagon or whatever, like expose them to your things. Cause like your things are worth listening to.
Yeah.
So I like had to like look at my bandmates and be like, are we just wrong? Like this whole time we thought we were like coming up with good ideas, but I think they actually just might be bad ideas. You know, it was like a real reckoning. So that was hands down like the worst show I've ever played. Just being
Yeah, but I will say like
booed by children.
Yeah, teenagers. But I feel like, was it like mostly teenage boys?
Yeah. And you know what? Like in the moment, it felt like terrible and something out of a movie, you know? But in retrospect, like a bunch of people came up after and were like, hey, that was a great set. Like, I'm sorry that some people were being rude. And I'm like, what do you mean some people? Like the whole place hated us. And they're like, no, it was just really like mostly the guys in the front.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Like they're the only people I can hear in the house. So I'm sure there was like a whole layer of people around the venue who are just like vibing with it, you know? But
Yeah.
in my brain, it was all just like crumbling in front of me like my whole life.
I feel like teenage boys, especially like teenage boys that are like young, and like a lot of rap music can be especially brutal, like just in.
Yeah, just being that age, like you haven't really developed like the empathy center of your brain yet, you know? Like you don't know what it means, you know, how it feels to like make someone feel bad and then feel bad about that. You know, that just like isn't in their brains yet.
Yeah, I think like Playboy Cardi had like Rico Nasty open for him.
Yeah.
And just like their sound is like essentially like coexists together. Like it like sounds like she definitely could open for him, but like there was a lot of booing and like Playboy Cardi should come on, blah blah blah. Just I mean, because
like
they don't have empathy, like you said, like as well as they should.
Right. Yeah. Like their brains aren't quite developed all the way yet. And I think that, and like that group, Suicide Boys, had like a cult following. It's like everyone who was there was obsessed with them and like planned their whole week around seeing them that night.
Yeah,
And
that's
all
what
of a
I think it
sudden,
is too, because like obviously Playboy Cardi too, like they're like people that are obsessed with Playboy Cardi, like are obsessed.
of
Like
course,
you don't know that one song that isn't released that is on this website that you can only access with a VPN, then you're not a true
yeah,
fan.
yeah, you're not slime.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say is that like Cardi fans are can be so like tunnel vision on Cardi. It's like their entire life. And like God bless them if that's what makes them happy. I hope that they can find other things that they can sort of like diversify their lives with. But yeah, like certain figures like that, people just like will throw themselves in front of a bullet for Cardi,
Yeah.
without hesitation. I think that is the exact like lineup or the archetype of boy who was standing
Yeah.
in front of me at that show, with someone who was like ready to tear me down.
Mm-hmm. So what's something that you look for in a show that will like make you remember it?
Um, hmm. I guess it depends what I'm like signing up for or going into. Like, I think there's like certain tenets of like show etiquette that I prefer, that I think should be abided by, like in terms of like how long like a show is or a concert is.
How long do you think
Like
the concert should be?
I was telling my friend I was at this same show that I was talking about the other night. I was on my feet for like 3 hours. And I
Yeah.
was like, I need to go to bed immediately. My body can't handle this anymore. And I was telling him like I can't imagine being at a festival. That sounds like
Well,
a really, really like difficult way to watch music.
yeah, I don't think I can do festivals anymore. Like when I was younger, I would go to music festivals, like 3-day music festivals. I don't know how people can do them, especially now that like they don't let you leave. Being in one place where it's like beaming down heat on you and you have to buy like really expensive food and water. Like if you want cold water, you have to buy it. If not, then you
Yeah.
have to,
These
like,
places are like not, these places are not kind to people. That's what I was saying. Like, I want to go to a festival that's like kind to me. I'm paying so much goddamn money to be there. Like, please be nice to me. Don't make me like suffer for like paying all this goddamn money for your $1 billion festival to happen. You
yeah,
know, like help me help you. Like, I want to like enjoy this place, but they make it so hard. They like go out of their way to make the conditions like so brutal
yeah,
all the time, and I'm going to South by Southwest next week. And that's why I was talking about this.
yeah,
It's like, there's nothing kind about it. It's all brutal. It's like made to like give the festival goer as little as possible and make them pay as much as possible.
yeah.
It's heinous. It like bothers me to no end. But yeah, so that's part of my ideal show setting. It's like 2, maybe 3 bands, 3 max.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
3 max. Okay, okay, we agree.
I don't need to see more live music than that. That, and it's probably bad for your hearing after that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
probably bad for your hearing regardless, but like we're talking like we're talking like, excessive hearing damage from watching like 6. I used to go to shows. It used to be super normal at like hardcore shows in like the late 2000s, early 2010s for like 6 hardcore bands to play, like, and everybody's going to watch.
mhm,
And if you get caught standing outside for a band, then like you have beef with them, like that word's going to get back to them. So like you better be inside, and you better like be just like absorbing 6 hours of like really harsh, loud music.
yeah,
Or not 6 hours, but like 6 bands worth. So yeah, so we're capping at 3 bands. That's maximum. And it has to be sort of like forgiving sounds on the ears if it's going to be 3. If it's going to be like a loud show, we're going 2 bands. Opener, headliner. I don't need to wait more than 1 hour to see who I paid to see.
mhm,
I'm happy to watch an opener. I don't need like 3 or 4 openers. That's just like, no one needs that. Package tours, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine being at a show for that long. So yeah, if it's like a band, I don't want to see like more than a couple bands. If it's like a DJ or something, or like electronic music, like I can stand to like experience like a long set, you know, because it's like the music is assembled for that. It's assembled to be played for like long periods of time at a consistent volume and not totally fry your brain. I mean, maybe it is, but like, you know, it's like it's way more like forgiving music for like in like a long-term setting.
And I feel like it's less about, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's less about like being at the front and like actually seeing, and more about dancing and like being
That's
into.
what I've come to love about dance music is like the live experience isn't predicated on the audience watching the performer on stage. It's a more like communal experience. It's like the person performing is providing this experience for the crowd.
Yeah.
It's not just like, it's not like a one-way thing. It's like more of like an ecosystem, you know. It's not like a group of people standing in one direction to watch this group of people, smaller group of people on stage.
Yeah.
It's
And then
just
like you get more space that way, because sometimes like if it's like a really crazy headliner, people will start pushing you and you can like
yeah, right. Where it's like if you're in a club or something, like people are just sort of spaced out in their own sort of like experiential bubble. You know, you're not like crammed. I mean, sometimes you are, but like you're not crammed and facing in the same direction as like the other 300 or 400 people in the room with you. It's like you can decide your own experience, where you face, how you position yourself, like what's happening around you. You know, it's like, it's way more like free form than a traditional like concert, you know, watching a band on stage.
Mhm.
I really appreciate that. And it makes me more comfortable as a performer too, when people can just sort of be in their own world and just like experience the music without staring at me the entire time. You know, like nothing wrong with that per se, but it's like, it's just a different experience.
Yeah. Okay. Any other criteria? Sorry, I kind of cut you off.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, just like mind your own business. Please just like I had like a terrible experience at this show a couple months ago where I was like, it was this like electronic duo called Over Mono. And they played in LA and I was so excited to see them. And it was so good. The entire set, everyone was like having so much fun. Like the vibrations are so high. And yeah, and like I decided at the end, towards the end of the set, I'm like, I didn't film any of this. I would like to have a video to like take home with me, or like, I don't know, just like look at the same way anyone films at like a show, because they want to have that recorded to like look at for another time. I'm recording during, I guess it's their last song. I didn't know it at the time, but it was their last song. And I'm just standing there with my phone in the air and I'm just like really feeling like what's going on. And like there are people around me dancing and it's just a great vibe. And this like really long buildup is happening and I'm just like along for the ride. I'm like moving with the music, and they're building and building. There's all this tension, and then it drops and like everyone's like exploding with energy. And this guy in front of me who's been like such a dickhead the entire night, like demanding all this space, like throwing his arms around. It's like a very tight, packed show. Mm-hmm. So he's like demanding all this space that like doesn't exist. So it's forcing all these other people to like, you know, like bundle up like around him, like to stay away from out of his arm's reach, because he's like swinging his arms around.
Yeah.
So I'm filming and like this thing happens, like the song is dropping again and the audience explodes and this guy turns around, he looks at me and he's like, he screams. I have it on my phone. He's like screaming, "Put your fucking phone away, you maniac." And I'm like, how, like, in what world is that like a cool thing to say to someone at a show? Like, how do you think you're helping me? How do you think you're like impacting my night? You know? I was just like so shocking and like, and gross. And I had to like get in his face and be like, what? Like, are you calling me a fucking maniac for filming at a show? And the vibes were just tarnished. We're like wrecked. He was like a straight up vibe terrorist. Like he just, and everyone was like, all these people around us were watching. And it was just like this terrible way to end this really great show. So yeah, I just want people to mind their own goddamn business. Like unless someone is like, going out of their way to like make other people uncomfortable, just like leave people alone.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. I'm having like a perfectly good time just like watching the band, like hearing the music, whatever. Obviously there are shows like hardcore shows or whatever where audience participation is like, it's tantamount to like the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like why people go, and it's like encouraged and celebrated. And I think that's really cool. But like I guess in the type of setting that I was in, it just felt like so inappropriate for that guy to do that. And it like marked me. I'm like, whoa, like I'm not going to take like going to a good show for granted, because it could be easily just like totally derailed by some dickhead, by like one dickhead's comment. A single dickhead can like ruin my night, So now I'm just like, when I go to a show, I'm like scanning, like, I wonder if there's any dickheads around here. Like, I hope no one just bombs my good time. So
Yeah, especially because it's just like, what did that do for them?
no, totally. And they were just probably like maybe on drugs or something, and like just being weird. Maybe they weren't in their right mind, but yeah, it felt totally unnecessary and lame. And yeah, I just ask that if I'm not bothering anyone, please don't bother me.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are like good criteria to have. Like,
it's just like, it should be like baseline. I just ask for like baseline respect.
Yeah,
that's all I need.
Okay, well, what are some of your favorite songs on your playlist that you created for?
Yeah, I got really excited making this playlist because like I had already compiled some of these songs together for this theme. Like I wanted to listen to songs that were about or kind of embodied the vibe of like being at a show or being in a band. Like the first song, Revolution 909 by Daft Punk, it kind of like takes you through this like rave environment before the song really like gets into, before you get into like meat of the song. Mm-hmm. And it feels very immersive. And I think that's what I like about this type of song. It's like, it really transports you somewhere in a way. And like music is always like, great music is always transportative, or like has the ability to like take you somewhere else and immerse you in a different environment. But these songs in particular, I think, and just like the concept of songs about being at a show or like experiencing live music or being in a band, it just feels like this, it feels like this club that you're like initiated into, and like you know the language, like you know the culture, like you know what it means to be there, and you know why it's significant and why people are writing songs about it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like, that's why like people keep making songs like that, like this, it's like over the years, there've been so many bands. And the reason I was compiling all these songs in the first place was like, I want to write a song about that, about like my experience of like being at a show and feeling like elated, or feeling like extreme things that come from being in like a crazy house show, or mm-hmm. like a warehouse rave, or like, I don't know, like a huge like stadium rock show, whatever. It like provides these super specific experiences that you can't get anywhere else. And it's just like a way to, again, like immerse yourself in that setting without actually being there. And I think that it takes a lot of, it takes like someone having like a real voice and a real perspective to make a good song about that, because like anyone, like so much of pop music is about being at a party, like we're at a party, we're having fun, and it's like unremarkable. in so many ways because it's so like surface level. But I think if you like take that experience apart a little more and you include like what makes it so enlivening, what makes it so special, what makes it like kind of sad if it is sad, what makes it like what is it that we're like coming to this setting for? If you can like get that into the energy of the song, I think like it's just like an undeniable thing. Like Dancing with Myself by Billy Idol is a good example, or Dancing Queen, by ABBA, like one of the best pop songs of all time. It's just about like being in a club and dancing, and they like captured like a really palpable essence that makes those experiences so magical, like when you're in the moment. Okay, so I didn't answer your question at all, so I'm going to tell you what songs are some of my favorites. I think it's usually like the first several songs. Rock and Roll Star by Oasis, they're one of my favorite bands of all time, and that's one of like the first songs I heard by them, and it just like totally sparked me, and they immediately became one of my favorite bands after hearing that. They just embody the spirit of being like a great rock and roll band, in my opinion. Band from the Roxy. It's not exactly about by Crass. It's not exactly about being at a show, but they talk about like how they're banned from playing at the Roxy, like in LA, and like why that happened. There's like a story, like narrative element, like what this band stands for, and like how that translates into the live music scene of the punk world in the 1970s and 1980s. It just like gives you like a little bit of history and a little bit of insight into like another time, or you get to see through someone else's eyes, which is like, I think the greatest quality of a great song. Let's see what else is on here. Dancing Queen, obviously goated track about being in a show.
Song to end to.
What's that?
It's a good song to end the playlist.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like ties it up nicely. Revolution 909 starts the playlist. I wanted to like, actually, and Dizzy Rascal, Baseline Junkie. I heard that song quite recently, like only a few months ago in like a club setting, and it like rattled the whole building. It was so heavy, and his energy is so extreme, and it goes through this like really kind of like eccentric, like cartoonish scenario of him being in a club listening to his own song, and then suddenly someone spins the CDJ and like the song stops, you just like record scratch moment, and he's like, it just puts you in that. There's like sort of like a metafiction to it, where there's like a story within a story, like a song within a song, or like a show within a show happening in the song, so it's like he just recreated a space where like someone's like fucked up, like everyone's drunk or like high or whatever, and like out of their minds, and like someone fell and like knocked over the CDJ, and the song stops, and he's like screaming at the person who did it, and then the song comes back in, and like the energy's still there, and it picks you up again, and you're like, wow, that could only happen like live in the moment. I feel like being able to replicate that on a recorded song is like, it's quite special.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say thank you for doing this, obviously, again.
Yeah, totally. My pleasure.
Is there anything that you would want to plug at the end of this?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to be at South by Southwest. If you're going to be there, I don't know, like I'll have all the shows that I'm playing up on my Instagram. I'm going to be in New York in
March 20th.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At Public Records. All right. Thank you, Tope.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Hey, y'all. Thanks again for tuning in for the episode. If you're listening to this now, Harp will be a year old tomorrow. So what better way to celebrate than listening to this pod? And, maybe after this, turning on the record. As usual, everything is linked in the description. Have a great day and talk to you soon.